I bought the A7S III a little over a year ago, and it's honestly been like the most convenient and enjoyable camera system I think I've ever owned, and that's kind of saying a lot because I've owned a lot of cameras. Now, real quick, this is not a full review of this camera. This is more of like an experience kind of vibe, so if you're into that, stick around. If not, if you're looking for a full review, there's like 5,000 other camera reviews on the A7S III, but that said, let's go ahead and skip all the intro stuff and jump right into why I think this camera is so convenient. And the first thing is, I'm calling it like the uncompromised image quality. And what I mean by that is no matter what frame rate you're in, your image quality is going to be the same. There's no line skip mode or anything like that. The 4K just looks the same no matter what. And that's super convenient because if I'm doing client work and I need to flip over to slow-mo real quick to get some B-roll, whatever the case may be, I know it's just gonna match exactly and look no different than any of the A-roll, and that's super convenient. And more on the image quality, the colors, and dynamic range. The dynamic range and the highlight roll off of this camera is really impressive. But the other thing is the colors, and the colors just look amazing. And can we just like time out, like sidebar real quick? Any camera in the last like 5 years, honestly, is capable of very beautiful images, and they all have really good colors. They're just different. They're not better than the other. It's kind of like back in the day where they would choose certain film stock for certain films for a certain look. It's kind of like cameras these days. So if you have a Panasonic or a Sony or a Canon or Red or Arri or whatever, well, of course you have Arri, it's good to be good, but any of these cameras are capable of producing good images and beautiful colors. Anyways, back on to image quality and colors. I think the image that comes out of this camera is beautiful, and it actually matches to my Komodo pretty easily and really well, and especially when it comes to like highlight roll off and stuff, it's really easy to match with the Komodo, so it's nice if I need like a C camera to my other two Komodos. It's really easy to match to that, so super stoked on that. The next thing is the low light, and the low light in this camera is sick. I mean, it's insane that you can crank this thing up to like 50,000 ISO or something crazy like that and still have a usable image. It's just ridiculous. Like, I never thought I'd actually use that, but I've actually used it on a couple of projects where all of a sudden it just turned into a no light situation, and I'm super glad that I was able to have this sensor and be able to crank that ISO up and still be able to keep filming and not lose my job. The next thing is autofocus, and you gotta remember the theme of this video is like just convenient and enjoyable to use. The autofocus just works all the time in this camera. Now it'd be cool if they had animal eye autofocus, but I rarely ever am filming wildlife, especially with this camera. But otherwise, the autofocus is awesome and it just works. I've only had it choke up on me a couple of times, and those were like impossible scenarios where like sometimes it was like no light scenarios where like I didn't even know where to point the camera because it was so dark. So not gonna fault the autofocus system in those scenarios, but otherwise the autofocus just works and it's really good. I'm also a big fan of the file sizes in this camera. I pretty much record everything in XAVC HS. Most of what I am filming is either personal, and I don't really care about the extra bitrate of, you know, the XAVC SI, or it's being delivered to the web, and at that point it's irrelevant because no matter if it's to Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever, the compression is gonna destroy it anyway, so it's kind of irrelevant at that point. And also exporting, like rendering in DaVinci Resolve to another H.265 format for like YouTube and stuff, it renders it at like 100 something frames per second or something ridiculous. So it's really nice to be able to have that, and like I said, it's convenient, it saves time. All right, next up I want to talk about, it has to do with this multi-interface shoe, and the reason why the thing is so convenient is because of this microphone right here. This is the Sony ECM B1M microphone. I'm pretty sure that's what the acronym is, but it's right here. This is such an awesome microphone, and the reason why it's so convenient is because you don't have to worry about plugging in over cables. It's super quick to take on and off, and it's super secure when it's on there. But it passes audio through the multi-interface shoe, and it's powered through the multi-interface shoe too. So you don't have to worry about charging an internal battery or replacing a battery or anything like that. It's all powered through the camera, and it doesn't drain the battery, which is awesome. It sounds pretty good. The shock mount is okay. You can get some handling noise, but for vlogging, reference audio, all that kind of stuff, this thing is super convenient, and It's just a small, lightweight little package. So I absolutely love this thing. This, like, honestly, this is like one of the most convenient things about this camera. Now, the last thing that I want to mention with this camera is really like the lenses around this camera. So this lens right here is the 16-35 Zeiss f4 OSS lens. And the reason why I like this lens so much, I had the budget to even go get the 2.8 G Master one, but I chose to go for this lens specifically because it's way smaller, and at 16mm for vlogging, f2.8 really isn't all that noticeable between f4 at a really wide end, and I honestly just preferred the size of this lens over the G Master. This is the perfect little vlogging setup right here. Like when you put this microphone on, like this thing is such a tiny little footprint, and it's just a perfect little vloggy setup. Honestly, it turns way less heads out in public than like my R5 and 15-35 with the big video mic MTG. I mean, that's kind of an intense setup for vlogging. This thing is honestly like the most I ever want to use when I'm vlogging, because I don't know, I'm so uncomfortable out in public talking to the camera, and this thing makes me feel a little bit more comfortable because it's not such a giant camera. Yeah, I really like this lens. It's built really well, and the only other lens I have for this camera is the 24-105 f4. So between those two lenses, pretty much all my bases are covered. Maybe at one of these days I'll get like a really fast prime for it, but otherwise, this is a super convenient little setup right here. Now that said, there are a couple things that really annoy me with this camera, and the first thing has to do with the custom functions, like the custom seat dials right here. Now it's really cool. You can save to 1, 2, or 3 different settings, but the most annoying thing about this is no matter what, I don't know if it's with this lens or what, but I will save autofocus continuous on to custom setting 1, and I'll have it on. If I turn the camera off, do a battery swap, or switch to custom setting 2 or whatever, it reverts back to manual focus, and it's super annoying. And when I'm like a lot of times I'll use this camera and rent like an FX3 or something for film and stuff, and if I do a battery swap real quick and turn this camera back on with this lens as a kind of a wide safety shot, and it reverts back to manual focus, a lot of times that angle is not even useful for me, and it's super annoying. I don't understand what it is. There's like a little gremlin that just lives in there, it seems like, and just kind of turns autofocus off. Super annoying. As you can see, there's no autofocus switch on this lens, so I don't know what the deal is, but I've registered the settings with this lens in autofocus mode on, and it still reverts back to manual focus. Super annoying. I don't really understand it. Next up, there's no time-lapse movie mode. Now, I know you can go in like S&Q mode and get like 1 frame per second, but like real time-lapse movie mode, like be able to record, you know, just get a shot every 3 or 5 or 10 seconds and then wrap it up into a movie file like you do on the R5 and spit it out and just call it a day. But at least there's the S&Q mode. But I'd love to have a time-lapse movie mode. It's something I use on the R5 quite a bit. The other thing is when you're in your custom shooting mode, you can't set a custom white balance, so that's kind of silly. And then the last thing is the in-camera noise reduction. I wish there was a way to turn that off. Now, the cleanup on IL 12800 is pretty stinking incredible, like how much the image cleans up, but it cleans it up almost too much, and like it looks like there's a lot of noise reduction being applied to the point where everything kind of looks plasticky in my opinion. So much so that if I'm using that setting, I'll end up applying just a little bit of grain, because even at export, it kind of adds a little bit more definition to the image, and it doesn't look super plasticky. But you know, that's pretty much it. I just wish you could turn the noise reduction off. So that's pretty much it. Otherwise, this is an awesome camera. I really love this camera. I don't know how long this video is. I hope you're still around. Should you go out and buy this camera? Depends on if you need it. Should you switch camera brands to get this camera? Honestly, I don't think so, unless there's things that you need in this camera that your current camera doesn't have. But I'm also not going to go tell you what to do with your money. It's your money. You work hard for your money, so go spend it however you want. I'm just telling you my experiences with this camera, and overall, it's overwhelmingly positive. So appreciate you watching. Hope to see you in the next one, and subscribe and comment and all that kind of good stuff. Just be nice in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.